It's football season and time for the show that examines the X's and O's of the top games for the coming weekend. It's time for the Gridiron Breakdown.
It's time for the Gridiron Breakdown. I'm Jay.
And I'm Alan.
And we are here to wrap up our preseason previews. We finished all the Power Five. It's now time to talk about the Group of Five previews, the American Athletic Conference, Conference USA, the Mid-America, Mountain West, and Sun Belt conferences, the NCAA Independents and FBS, our playoff predictions. And then, Alan, we've actually got 2 football games to lightning round this week. It's week 0. The preseason is over, man.
Yeah, they've kind of snuck this week 0 in on us because, you know, you and I are sitting there counting down to the 1st of September. We do actually have games the week before. The silly season's over. No more of this he should, she said. No more quarterback battle dramas unless you're Alabama. You know, I'm just ready to get down to breaking down games. I'm tired of the previews, tired of the banter. Now, we did get to see the running of the Gumps, which is always entertaining. But I'm ready to see some football, Jay.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of things going. We've seen Ohio State and Urban Meyer seemingly go up in flames. We'll get to that in just a little bit. And as of this recording, not sure what that's going to look like. But we got some other stuff to talk about, and we want to spend the bulk of our time on the Group of Five. Again, we've been doing these 2017 recaps for every conference, so it's hard to do with 5 conferences. So really just, you know, what I wanted to do was talk about 2 things that stuck out. You know, FAU had an incredible run, Florida Atlantic with Lane Kiffin and kind of third chance you know, as they want to call it. He's put together a good, solid crew. They had a 10-win season last year where they were tearing up the CUSA. And then UCF, man, what can you say? They ran the entire table undefeated, went to the bowl game, beat an SEC team pretty soundly, too. And the way they took care of Auburn in the Peach Bowl. Scott Frost leaves, takes that crew to Nebraska. Now you got Josh Heupel coming in. Group of Five had a pretty outstanding 2017. But the thing that didn't happen was you had an undefeated team that didn't even get near the playoff. The highest UCF got was like 12th. So I wanted to ask you, what's the best scenario in the way the current format is set up? Nothing else changes. How's a Group of Five team going to make the playoffs?
Well, they're going to need a couple of things. First of all, they're probably going to need to be ranked coming into the season. They're probably going to have a couple of good seasons before that to kind of make them relevant on a national stage, kind of like we saw happen to Boise in the 2000s. The other thing they're going to need is they're going to need to have a couple of good out-of-conference games. They're going to have to win those games. This year comes to mind like Florida Atlantic playing at Oklahoma and playing at UCF. Florida Atlantic could win both those games, and that would get them in the conversation. But the thing that really has to happen, Jay, is you have to have the Power 5 conferences kind of cannibalize themselves, because I don't think there's any way the committee will put an undefeated Group of 5 in over a one-loss conference champion out of a Power 5.
I mean, the mental gymnastics you have to do to make the case for it. And I mean, if you want to read those, folks, I recommend the college football subreddit because there's tons of threads on how, you know, this Group of 5 team deserves to get in, or if this Group of 5 team had played this team from 2015 schedule or some, you know, all this stuff could have got in. The reality is, though, Alan, you're dead on. You're going to have to play ranked teams, beat them soundly, and then hope those ranked teams remain good, but not so good that they don't overshadow that loss. So all of your conference champions have to have 2 losses or something like that. I don't see a path for a G5 team to get in the playoff in the current format. Going forward, that might be, but that doesn't mean they can't get into your 6 bowl rounds. And I do think that's a big accomplishment for a lot of these teams. And so we'll come back to that playoff question in a bit, but it's time to turn our attention to the 2018, and we're going to kind of round robin this. I'm going to pitch a conference to you. You tell me who you think's going to win it. I'll counter that and vice versa. And we're going to start with the American Athletic Conference since they were, I guess, the top Group of 5 conference last year.
Well, they were, and I mean, hats off to Scott Frost and his UCF Knights. They had a fantastic season last year. My champion this year, I think I'm going to go with the South Florida Bulls. Last year they were 10-2, played really great. I think Charlie Strong's got things rolling there. They're very dynamic offensively. Defensively, they pay a bend but don't break. They're returning 6 offensive starters and 5 defensive starters. But Charlie's actually doing some pretty good recruiting there in Florida, kind of getting the leftovers from Florida State, Miami, and Florida, and really turning that into something. The reason why I picked them is over Central Florida, Jay, was mainly Josh Heupel's coming in. Scott Frost is gone. Some NFL draft picks are off that Central Florida team. Well, I think Central Florida will still be a very good team this year. South Florida was 10-2 last year. They did lose to Central Florida in a pretty tight game, 49-42. So I think that Central Florida is going to be my AAC champion. I mean, South Florida.
South Florida. Okay, so Charlie Strong, USF getting it done. That's not a bad pick, man. I'd like that one. I agree with you. I think UCF steps back just a little bit, though. Mackenzie Milton at quarterback's a fantastic player. Adrian Killings at running back can get some things done, but I think that's going to be a bit of a drop-off from Heupel or Frost to Heupel. I also think, look, UCF won a lot of very close games last year, and that's what you got to do if you're going to be a great team and an outstanding team, but I don't know that they can overcome all those losses. The thing is, though, I'm not buying UCF the way you are. I'll tell you the team that I'm gonna go ahead and pick to win the AAC. That's those Memphis Tigers. I mean, they were right in it last year as it was, and I think they're going to be right back in it this year. Mike Norvell's got a really strong team coming in. They play a real wide open brand of football. I mean, they really get up and down the field like a basketball team on fast break. I mean, it's pretty wild to watch them play. And as they head into the 2018 season, man, I just like everything I see about Memphis this year. They've got a good looking schedule. I think they've got to replace Riley Ferguson at quarterback, which is a big deal. But I think Brady White is probably going to be the guy that ends up doing that. If not him, they've got good players out there. I think they're a team that is just on the verge of getting some things done. They've had NFL talent there for a couple of years. I'm going to take Memphis in the AAC, man. I like Memphis to take it out. So you've got USF, and I've got Memphis. Move over to the Conference USA now, which, our friend Jason Kirk from SB Nation just refers to as the misfit toys of Division I college football. Like, this is the most scattered, random conference alignment you could get. And, I mean, is there any other pick but FAU, man? Like, if they don't win it, that's a huge shock. First off, Lane Kiffin's got that team loaded, all right? Devin Singletary at running back is going to be fantastic. He's got, a couple of ex-FSU quarterbacks down there to play. I think their offensive line's intact. They're bringing back a ton of defense. They got a tough schedule. You're right. They play Oklahoma. That's not going to be a great opening game. It could be a lot of points in that game, though. But I think FAU's the kind of team that can hang in there with some people. Matter of fact, that game, September 1st, you just want to kind of get a bypass game, folks. Check out that FAU game. There could be some points on the board there. I like Florida Atlantic, and it sounds like you're kind of leaning that way too.
Yeah, I mean, Jay, without Florida Atlantic last year, Conference USA would have been awful. Probably the worst conference in all of Division I football. Florida Atlantic and Lane Kiffin burst onto the scene and had a phenomenal year. And, I think Kiffin's just got it rolling down there in Boca. He's got a loaded team, full of talent. He plays loose. He seems to be having fun. He's calling touchdowns before the ball's even thrown. I think they're going to have a good year. They got some tough games, but they also got some winnable games that'll put them in a better position. I mean, they play Central Florida. They get Air Force. So there's some named teams on their schedule outside of kind of the mucky CUSA schedule. And Jay, we've seen funnier things happen, especially on opening weekend. If Lane was to be able to get a big win in Norman, that would set his team rolling.
No, I completely agree. I mean, they're a team that if they can run their table, they are certainly going to be one to be reckoned with. Could get themselves in that New Year's Six. But either way, we both agree they're going to win Conference USA. So now it's time for the MAC, man, that Tuesday night MACtion. Tell us who you think is going to come out of the Mid-American.
Well, I'll tell you a funny story. So the local radio station here, for their bracket pool, they whoever loses their office bracket pool has like a punishment. And last year it was the guy who finished last had to go to the worst MAC game of the year and dress as Bob Ross. So, I think I'm going to go with Western Michigan. I know there's no PJ Fleck there, and I know last year they still did fairly solid. I think they're going to be the team. I don't know that Toledo or Akron's really going to be able to topple them. Akron, I think, played them in the championship game last year, if I'm not mistaken. So I think Western Michigan will continue to to be the team to beat in that conference.
Boy, I completely disagree. I don't disagree with the fact that Western Michigan might be good on their side of things, but I'm going to tell you the team that is loaded to come back and do really well, and that's the Fighting Frank Soliches at Ohio, man. Those Ohio Bobcats in that ochre green outfit, look, they run the ball well. They play really gritty defense. They're like a small Big Ten team up there, and I think their side of the conference in particular is definitely the strongest one, but they've got the schedule that lines up better. They've got the best team coming back. I like Ohio to come out of the MAC this year and take care of things. So I'll sell Western Michigan. Though I'll tell you, Terry Bowden up at Akron, not doing bad football work either. So wouldn't be surprised if Ohio didn't have to take out Akron along the way to get there. But I think Ohio is going to be my team out of the MAC this year. It's out to the Mountain West now, man, and I mean, boy, it's hard to not love what I see out of Boise State, man. Like, Brett Rippon's coming back. Now, yeah, he's got to replace his top wide receiver, but they've had him there for years. They only scored like 33 points a game last year. They play good defense. And listen to this schedule, man. They open up at Troy. That's going to be a real fun game. Then they get UConn, at Oklahoma State, at Wyoming, and then they get into San Diego State, Nevada, Colorado State, Air Force, BYU, Fresno State, who they split with last year, New Mexico, and then Utah State. It's a very doable run. I like Boise State out of the Mountain West, and I'll just go ahead and spoil it now. I think they run the table, man. I think they're undefeated and pushing on the door of getting in the New Year's Six this year.
So you got them winning at Oklahoma State. That's pretty interesting.
I tell you why. I don't think Oklahoma State is going to be terribly special. If you go back to our Big 12 preview, I think I said as much. I was holding off on picking that on that show, but I'll tell you now, I think Boise gets that one that week.
Well, I don't disagree with you. Boise is the class of the Mountain West. Last year, they were ranked 119 in experience. This year, with 16 returning starters, they're up to 61. They were a very solid team last year. Brett Rippon's a great quarterback. Alexander Mattinson to tote the rock for them. I like Boise to win. Now, I will say, Jay, I think that week one game at Troy may be a little trickier than people think. That may be one of the trickiest games on their schedule all year long.
The hardest part of that will be the fact that it's going to be so hot and humid down there in Troy, because Troy Stadium is in a ditch, and I mean, it is going to be sweltering there. If that was last year's Troy team, I'd pull the trigger on the Trojans all day. This year's Troy team, with everything they're having to replace, I don't know. That's a tough ask right out of the gate.
Well, yeah, and I agree with you, but I think that heat and humidity for teams that aren't used to it, I think it can be a great equalizer. But we can talk about that game maybe in the week one lightning round.
Absolutely. That'll be one to come back to. So we wrap up our group of five. You're picking Boise State as well out of the Mountain West. We wrap up our group of five with the Sun Belt. So speaking of Troy's conference, who do you like in the Sun Belt?
The Sun Belt it's a tough conference for me to pick, to be honest. Troy was great last year, but like you mentioned, they've lost so much off those teams for this year. So I think this year I'm going to go with, I don't have a real good grip, but I'm going to go Arkansas State. I think Arkansas State generally has a good team. I think last year they were up there with Troy trying to lead that division and that conference. So I'll take the Red Wolves to win Conference USA.
Oh, you snuck mine from me because I thought I was going to be cool and get Arkansas State in on you, but no, you're dead on in why they should be feared. Look, Justice Hansen's coming back at quarterback. He's going to have another massive season this year. They're going to put up points on offense. Now, defensively, they lost some pieces, particularly linebacker, so they're going to have to recover there. But Arkansas State, look, they open up with Southeastern Missouri, so that's no big. Then they got to go to Alabama, so that's their paycheck game. Then they go to Tulsa. Then they get UNLV at Georgia Southern, App State at home, October the 9th. Circle that game. That's going to be a pivotal game in the Sun Belt. Then Georgia State, then at Louisiana Lafayette. South comes in, then to Coastal, La Monroe, and then Texas State. They don't play Troy in the regular season. In fact, this year the Sun Belt will have its first conference championship game. Probably going to be between Arkansas State and Troy when it's all said and done, but I will take the Red Wolves of Arkansas State as well. Think they're going to have too much offense and have enough defense to be able to navigate through and have a pretty good season. Probably win 8 or 9 games out of that too, and that's not going to be a bad year at all. So good work at Arkansas State. So just a review in the American Athletic. Alan picked South Florida, USF. I picked Memphis. In the Conference USA, we both picked FAU. In the MAC, Alan's got Western Michigan. I've got Ohio. We both picked Boise State and Mountain West, and we both picked Arkansas State in the Sun Belt. Now, I spoiled mine and I already and said I thought Boise State could run the table, get in the New Year's Six. Outside of FAU, Boise State, anybody else out there that we should pay attention to that might can knock on that door?
Well, I mean, I think Memphis could, even though I didn't pick them to win. They definitely have the tools. They have a strong offensive line coming back. They're bringing a lot back from a defense, and they've shown the ability to beat big teams, beat UCLA, beating a couple of big names, and beat Ole Miss a couple of years ago. So they've shown that ability. So I would say throw Memphis into that group with FAU and Boise.
Yeah, I agree. And, we haven't even talked about probably the best group of 5 player out there, but because his team's not going to be in the mix for anything. But watch Ed Oliver at Houston. Watch him play when you get a chance of the defensive line, because you're going to see him on Sundays and probably in the top 5, I would think, in the draft. That dude is just such a stud on defense. I mean, we've talked about Devin Singletary, Mackenzie Milton. Those are offensive stars. But Ed Oliver for the defense at Houston, don't – think of the fact that he plays for a group of 5 team matters. That is top line, number 1 first round talent in my book.
Well, I mean, just to let you know, in Phil Steele's top draft eligible players at defensive tackle, which Ed Oliver is, he has Ed Oliver ranked above both defensive tackles from Clemson, if that tells you how special a talent that kid is.
Man, that is something, because the guys at Clemson are no joke. We've mentioned some big games that Power 5 teams have against these group of 5 teams. FAU's got Oklahoma. San Diego State plays at Stanford opening weekend. Little known remembrance, they beat Stanford last year with Rashad Penny running all over them. So I think Stanford might want a little payback on that. That Houston team, by the way, goes to Texas Tech. September the 15th might be the beginning of the end of the Cliff Kingsbury era if Ed Oliver has his way there. And then I'm going to give you another sneaky one that weekend. Fresno State goes to UCLA. I think Jeff Tedford's going to stomp UCLA. That UCLA team is not going to be ready yet under Chip in week 3 of the season. I think Fresno State's going to get a big win there. You got any group of 5 teams you think might be able to pull a sneaky one on somebody through the season?
Well, I think there are a couple of possibilities. I mean, I think the names you mentioned, Jade, I'm actually going to keep the rest of them close to the vest because I don't want to spoil any potential danger zone picks, my friend.
That is correct. The danger zone is lurking around. The Jets are fueling up. And it's so appropriate, too, that somewhere in the world right now, Tom Cruise is doing a dead, flat-out run, probably on 2 broken feet in the Top Gun sequel. So that's going to be fun to see, by the way, just as a side note, because the running of Tom Cruise started after Top Gun. So see how he works that into there will be fun, even though he's 80 years old at this point. All right, so that's our group of 5 preview, but there's some independents out there, right? I mean, and the most notable of which is Notre Dame, right? That's a team that has been in the championship game in the BCS era. They haven't made the playoff yet, but they've been a solid team under Brian Kelly. What do you make out of the Golden Domers this year? You think they can make a run?
There are some people who expect big things out of Notre Dame, and I will tell you, Notre Dame hadn't had back-to-back 10-win seasons since 1992-93 when we're just throwing stuff out there.
That's Auburnish. Wow.
So Notre Dame lost 2 fantastic offensive linemen who went early in the draft. They lost their starting running back from a team that was 7th in rushing last year. I've never bought Brian Kelly and his style of football. I think Notre Dame takes a step back. I don't expect more than 7-8 wins out of Notre Dame, especially with that schedule they got. With their normal teams they play, they're adding in Michigan this year in their ACC schedule. Not a good schedule for them, and I think it's going to be a tough year for the Golden Domers.
Yeah, they will be the site of that opening week college game day, Notre Dame and Michigan, because a big game. My thing on Notre Dame this year is probably 8 or 9 win team, steady, nothing real special. national picture-wise, but I think they're going to pick up some good wins. Their big thing to me is I just don't know if Brandon Wimbush can get it done at quarterback. He's a great running quarterback. I don't know that he can pass them through if they get down 2 touchdowns to a team like USC or Clemson or somebody like that. I don't know how they can handle that, and so I just don't think they're going to figure in nationally. I think they're a good, solid team, not a great team. Army, 10 wins last year and only 20 pass attempts. That's the most amazing thing ever. If you haven't picked up one of the preseason magazines, folks, I don't stump for these, but I would recommend the Athlon one because there's a pictorial history and written documentation of every Army pass from last year and what it mattered. Army ran like nobody's business. And, man, Jeff Monk is doing great work up there, but it's hard to follow a 10-win season. It really is. Ahmad Bradshaw probably not coming back at quarterback. Moved on now. They're going to have to replace some people. I think they're going to be good. Navy's going to be improved. Air Force, I think, still a little bit of ways away. So Army's got a chance to repeat in the Commander-in-Chief trophy, but I don't think they can follow a 10-win season. But I think that should be a bowl team at least.
I agree. I think you're probably looking 7-8 wins. They got a tough game against Oklahoma there early in the season, and I think they're going to lose a bit. And what you see, especially with the service academies, they're usually pretty steady, and then every third or fourth year they have a good year because they're led by a lot of upperclassmen. I think Army takes a step back due to that. Still expect 6, 7, 8 wins and a nice bowl game for them.
I got one question, man. What do you do with BYU and Kalani Sitani out there trying to fix that mess? I mean, they started off okay last year, completely turned sideways. Can they improve?
Well, I think it's going to be hard not to improve after last year because that was just awful.
That's true. Kalani Sitaki, I should say. Let me get his name right, yeah.
I'm not exactly sure how to fix that program. They're at a little bit of a disadvantage recruiting against other schools and due to their religious affiliations and the missions required. That used to be kind of a benefit for them because they would get some of these older, mature players, guys who are 2 or 3 years older coming to college. I think BYU might sneak into a bowl, but I don't think they're going to be very good this year.
Yeah, I don't even know if they can make a bowl, man. Let's be honest with you. I just don't know. They're so far behind, and I get why they went independent, and I know revenue-wise it's working out for them. Good for them, but I think they're just going to get beat a lot this year. They might get up to 5 wins, maybe 6, but they got to improve, but sheesh, I don't know what you can do to fix that mess. New Mexico State, finally made a bowl after all those years, won that bowl game, plucky, fun, largely overmatched. What do they do for an encore as an independent?
I don't really know, Jay. I think they have potential to make a bowl game a year. I think their ceiling is probably 7 wins. Their schedule isn't too awful. Some winnable games in there, so I'll say they go 7 wins and go bowling again.
You like them better than I do. I think they step back. I think they maybe get 4 or 5 wins this year. I just don't think they're going to be able to compete on the permanent level, but they were a fun story last year. I have one note on the next team, UMass. No. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, they've been awful. Now, they did almost beat Tennessee last year, if you remember that.
That ain't
about
saying
20
much.
minutes where I was very excited about it. But, yeah, UMass is awful. UMass sports has been a wreck since John Calipari left.
And left it in flames.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't think they're just not any good. And the last one, new team coming up from the lower ranks to play FBS ball. They're independent. Liberty University. Enjoy being everyone's tune-up or homecoming game for a few years as you cash checks that can build the weight room your program needs to compete.
Ditto.
Yeah, not going to be a pretty year if you're a fan of the Flames. Well, all right, that is our group of 5, our independents. I want to do a quick review of the Power 5 because we've done all these conference previews one at a time, but I'll give everybody kind of here's what we picked out of the Power 5, and then, Alan, we're going to get into what our playoff 4 predictions are. And we're not going any further than the 4. We're not going to try to pick who wins the national championship, all that. We're just going to get our 4. But our Power 5 review, we both picked Clemson out of the ACC. I don't think there's any question about that. We were both high on them, as are a lot of other people. In the Big Ten, you picked Ohio State. I picked Wisconsin, and what I think will be some carnage there. In the time since we did that review, and now that we're doing this, Urban Meyer's on administrative leave, for the wide receivers coach that they ended up firing, that there's some domestic abuse allegations about, a lot of stuff going on. How you feeling about Ohio State still?
Not very good, Jay. I think if I would get a chance to change that pick, I would pick Wisconsin to win the conference.
All right. I'm actually going to give you a mulligan on that. We'll put Wisconsin in. But as of this recording, we don't know what's going to happen with Urban Meyer at Ohio State.
Well, how could I have known he was going to get put on administrative leave before the beginning of the season?
No, and look, that wasn't why I picked against him either. So interesting to note. In the Big 12, you picked Oklahoma. I picked Texas in a bit of a revenge comeback to take out Oklahoma. And then we both picked Washington in the Pac-12. And then in the SEC, you picked Alabama and I picked Georgia. So I'm going to ask you for your playoff four, Alan. But since I usually make you go first on these things, I'm going to be that guy and go first this time. We'll lay out my four for you. And then I want to hear your four, and we can kick these around for a bit. I think Clemson's going to be the number one overall team. I don't think there's any question about that. They're just a fantastic football team. Got a good schedule. I like Georgia as the number two team. I think they're an SEC champion, but I think they're going to lose a game along the way. Somewhere they're going to slip up, but it's not going to cost them the chance to get to Atlanta and then win the SEC. I like Washington to run the Pac-12, to come out of there. They may or may not have one loss, but I think they're going to represent the Pac-12, be in the playoff. And then for my fourth and at-large team, I've got Alabama. And the reason I have Alabama over a Big Ten team and over the Big 12 teams, I think the Big 12 is going to cannibalize itself. I think the Big 10 is going to eat itself up a little bit too. And I think Alabama is going to be a one-loss non-conference champion, just like they were last year. And they're going to lose the SEC championship game, but still get into the playoffs. So my playoff four are Clemson, Georgia, Washington, and Alabama. Who are your playoff four?
Well, Jay, I'm pretty sure you just had half the people listening to this turn it off after you just picked two SEC teams to win and go to the playoffs. So
I may have.
I apologize. I'm going to go in no particular seeded order. I'm going to go Clemson. I'm going to go Washington. I'm going to go Alabama. And then, Jay, give me some of those Oklahoma Sooners. I think Lincoln Riley will have enough. They'll have enough wins. Probably end up with one loss, but I think with the carnage in the Big Ten, I think they will get through and make it.
All right. So you've got Clemson, Washington, Alabama, Oklahoma. I've got Clemson, Georgia, Washington, and Alabama. All those picks sure to go wrong somewhere along the way, but we've put them out there to see how it goes. Maybe I am being a bit of a homer or a bit of I'm really trying not to be, but honestly, I think I've made a pretty good case in our previews of why I think the Big 12 and Big 10 are going to eat themselves up and maybe get themselves out of the playoff. And I think Georgia can win the SEC, but I think the only team that can beat Alabama is Georgia. And if that's their only loss, they haven't been left out yet. They haven't been left out of the BCS in 10 years. I just don't see how that's all of a sudden going to change in one off season. But it's week 0 lightning round, though, Alan. There's actual football to talk about. Can you believe it? They sneak these in on us, man. But there's big, well, they're not big games, but they're games this first weekend. And the first one is the Hawaii Fighting Rainbows coming to stateside to play Colorado State.
That they throw these games in, and I understand, get these teams on television, get the season rolling. I like what Mike Bobo is doing at Colorado State. They really gave Alabama more than they could handle for a half last year. Hawaii's kind of been up and down here. Long road trip. Of course, I agree. I guess all their road trips are long. So I'll take Colorado State. I'll pick it 34-20.
Man, I agree with you on Colorado State. I think Nick Rolovich and his crew at Hawaii, they got too many obstacles to overcome, including that trip, the high winds, the elevation. It's going to be too much. I like Colorado State to win as well. I'll go a little lower scoring, though. I think they get it done 28-17. Then Wyoming takes on New Mexico State. I'm one of those weirdos that thinks about Wyoming might be better now that Josh Allen's not trying to get himself drafted in the top 10 anymore and making some really horrendous throws. Now he's up to do that in Buffalo and get paid millions of dollars for it. The good thing for Wyoming is they got a good system. They got good players and a defense that can travel, and they get a team that, again, is a plucky upstart team that's going to have a lot of emotion riding, but I think emotion only carries you so far. I like Wyoming to go down, take out New Mexico State in this opening game. I'll give it to Wyoming 23-14.
I agree with you. I think Wyoming actually will be better without Josh Allen because they're more of a system team. And when you had one guy trying to elevate himself, I think that really threw that off. So I think, like we both said, New Mexico State's going to have a tough time this year. Wyoming seems to be the better team on paper. So I'll take Wyoming by a score of 20-13.
So we both like Colorado State and we both like Wyoming pretty comfortably in our Week 0 games. Alan, when we return next week for the Gridiron Breakdown, it'll be time to get into our regular format and talk about the first week of college football, and that first weekend is loaded. Tons of great games we're going to get into here on the show. Can't wait.
Yeah, I mean, the toughest time I definitely had was us picking the games to talk about and those that we're just going to kind of breeze through. A lot of great football. A great chance to see where your team is, where they might go, and for others to go ahead and start crying. But you know what? Hope is eternal right now until sometime afternoon on.
Exactly. And look, it's going to be a lot of fun. Break out your grill, get your tailgate going. It's Labor Day weekend. Everybody's off Monday. We got a weekend full of college football, so we will be back next Monday for more Gridiron Breakdown and to start getting into the 2018 college football season proper. Until next time, thank you for joining and listening in, folks. We really appreciate your support. For Alan, I'm Jay. You've been listening to the Gridiron Breakdown.
Thank you for listening to the Gridiron Breakdown. Tune in next week for another show. The information discussed in the Gridiron Breakdown is for entertainment purposes only and is not officially connected with the NCAA or any other college football teams discussed.